Wednesday on Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here. Glad to be back for another day. Hope everybody's having a great day out there today. It's December. We're getting through it. These are the cold months, right? December, January, February. Meteorological winter, even though we don't have the solstice for a couple weeks. The darkest day is not for about 17 days. It's starting to get cold. We're feeling the winter right now, settling in. Nice thing is, comfort, sports, sit there and watch. We got it all going right now. And a lot of these teams in Minnesota are rolling right now. We'll talk about some of them today. Randy Johnson joins me here in a little bit to talk Gopher football. They had their best game of the year, in my estimation, in their regular season finale against Wisconsin last Friday. Randy and I will talk about that game, talk about what bowl game could await the Gophers, and talk about signing day stuff, talk about upcoming stuff with transfer portals. So plenty of stuff for Randy and I to get into. Chip Scoggins joins me right after that. We'll talk Mankato, Minnesota State Mankato football. They are on a roll in the Division II playoffs, knocking off a couple of higher seeded teams, as did Bemidji State, two Minnesota teams from the NSIC, the Northern Sun, pulling some upsets along the way. Now they will play each other this weekend in Mankato for the right to advance in those playoffs. Winner will go to the semifinals, the national semifinals. So quite a run for both teams. Chip and I will talk about that here in just a little bit. A little bit more Gophers signing day stuff at the end of the show. First, though, what did I miss? The Wild. We're going to start there. We're going to get into the Wild, Gopher women's basketball, and the Timberwolves here in the opening segment. But the Wild win again in overtime. That is 4 straight wins for the Wild, all by 1 goal. The last 2 coming in overtime. Surprise, surprise, Kirill Kaprizov factoring heavily in both of those overtime winners. He set up, I think, Spurgeon a couple nights ago for the game winner in overtime and then scores the winner on a one-timer last night. They beat Vancouver 3-2. Season record now sitting at 17-4-4 for the Timberwolves. 17-4-4. And now, if we're going to count the overtime winners as wins, this is one of my pet peeves. We got to count the overtime losses, the shootout losses as losses. So still 17-8, really. I'm going to call them 17-8. That's still an awfully good record, way better than I thought they were going to be. It's not really been a secret. It's been a surprise that they've been this good, but it's not been a secret how they're doing it. The lineup has a lot of talent, a lot of depth. Their best players are playing really well, like Kaprizov's taking a jump. And of course, Philip Gustafson has been tremendous this season. Wasn't his best year a year ago. That was a big part of their dip. He and Marc-Andre Fleury both have been much better this year. But Gustafson, my goodness, he has been tremendous this season. 30 saves last night, just 2 goals allowed. He has been fantastic all year, making himself big as Vancouver came down on a 2-0 in overtime. They missed the net. Wild go the other way on a 2-on-1. Winning goal, game over. Those are the margins in the NHL right now. And I'm seeing some similarities right now between the Wild and the Vikings, right? Like two teams where expectations before the season were pretty middling, right? The Vikings, you looked at them and you were like, 7 wins, 8 wins. That's probably where they're going to wind up. Not totally bereft of talent, but not a team that felt like this was their year. Instead, they're 10-2, right? And early on, the Vikings were winning a lot of games by a lot, right? They were, they beat the Giants 28-6 at the start of the year. They beat the Texans, 34-7. Had a fairly comfortable win over the 49ers, even if that wasn't a lopsided score. Went up big on the Packers before the Packers rallied and came up a little bit short in the end. But ever since then, it's been much tighter with the Vikings in their games. There's been tighter, lower scoring games generally. Last week, a great example, have to come from behind, beat Arizona 23-22. Complimentary football, needing it in all phases of the game. Kind of feels like that's how the Wild have evolved. Early in the year, they're winning games like 4-1, 5-1, 6-2, things like that. Now, they've all been tightening up a little bit, so they're not maybe playing quite as dominantly as they were playing, but being able to win the close games, that is not to be taken for granted. That is not entirely luck. That is kind of making the plays when they matter most. The Vikings have been great at that this year. I think the Wild are showing a knack for that as well. So if they can keep that up, if they can be that team that's good in those situations, that's good in those one-goal games, good in those one-score games like the Vikings, this could end up being a year where both of those teams surprise us and could potentially do some damage once they get to the playoffs. Speaking of a team doing some damage, Gopher women's basketball 10-0 now. Had a blowout win again yesterday, overwhelming North Florida 90-44, more than doubling them up. Haven't really been tested a whole lot in this non-conference schedule. Not the stiffest non-conference tests along the way, but 10-0 is still 10-0. I mean, Gopher men's basketball team hasn't had a lot of big tests either, but they've already lost a few. Gopher women look to be pretty impressive, of course, doing it right now without Mara Braun. She's out, their best player with that foot injury again. If they can get her back at some point, look out, because this team already looks dangerous, already looks like it's loaded up with talent heading into Big Ten play. 10-0, no matter who you are playing, when you're winning every game. I think they've only had one game this season that wasn't decided by double digits. That's how much they're winning by in these non-conference games. So impressive right now what Don Plitzowite has going over there. And again, though, we will wait to see more what happens in the conference part of play. Timberwolves didn't play today. They start, though, an important 3-game winning streak. I kind of glossed over their win over the Lakers on Tuesday's show just because I had so much else to get to, a bunch of Viking stuff on the Tuesday show. 10-10 now. We were all saying, give them 20 games, right? Give them 20 games to adjust. That's basically a quarter of the season. Figure out what their identity is. Hard still to get a handle on exactly where they are at because it's been so up and down. It's been so turbulent. You've had Anthony Edwards talk about these, we're underachieving. We can't talk to each other. Airing of grievances. Ever since Ant said that, though, they've had two of their best defensive games of the season, right? They beat the Clippers 93-92 at Target Center a few nights ago, and then routed the Lakers a couple nights ago. So starting to feel a little bit better about their identity. What I see, though, is a team that just isn't nearly as efficient as it was a year ago. And you can draw a straight line to the Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo trade, right? Towns, for whatever deficiencies he has in attitude sometimes and defense at times. And by the way, it was no upgrade to get Julius Randle on defense. Towns has always been a remarkably efficient offensive player, a guy when things are stalling, you can throw it to him late in the shot clock. Usually he can get some kind of decent look. He can bail you out, and then in the flow of the offense, he's going to score, all over the court. That is, if you took it for granted while he was here, you have to appreciate it even more now that he is gone. That was something that he gave them for 9 seasons, something that, they don't have a ton of efficient offensive players on this team. Naz Reid can be efficient when he's going, but he hasn't been as consistent. He hasn't been as efficient as he had been in past years. I don't think Anthony Edwards is ever going to be the world's most efficient player. It's tough sometimes for a guard to be that efficient. He's going to take a lot of shots. If his 3 isn't falling, he is not going to be a terribly efficient player. Julius Randle could be more efficient. It never looks efficient. Sometimes the results are fairly efficient, but he's not Karl Anthony Towns equal when it comes to efficiency. Rudy Gobert, his shooting percentage numbers will always look pretty good, but he's not an efficient offensive player. His free throws catch up to him there. Mike Conley Jr. Has always been a pretty efficient player, but he's getting older. He has not had the year you want him to have. Jaden McDaniels, never going to be an efficient player. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I don't think he's a terribly efficient offensive player. They just don't have a lot of efficiency, a lot of offensive efficiency. So what the year is going to boil down to me, is can their depth and their defense overcome, make up for that lack of offensive efficiency. And I think you've seen that in spurts. I think you've seen some encouraging signs. Like I said, only gave up 92 to the Clippers, 80 to the Lakers. Now they play the Clippers again, and then 2 against Golden State, and then the Lakers again. So the season starts to get interesting. Then they're at the Spurs. Those are the next 5. And then after that, you get a little 3-day break, and then December 19th, home against the Knicks. So you got 5 more games before, what's going to be an all eyeballs on you kind of game, based on the trade at Target Center against the Knicks. It's just part of a stretch where you're playing a lot of tough teams. They got the Warriors again after that. You got the Mavs and the Rockets again somewhere in there, then the Thunder and the Celtics. Like, it's going to come fast and furious right up until the start of the new year. Can they be a good enough defensive team to mask their offensive inefficiencies? That is going to tell the ultimate story of this Timberwolves season. Let's talk Gopher football today with Randy Johnson, as we do most Wednesdays. Randy, feels like PJ Fleck's team might have saved their best regular season performance for last of the regular season, at least. Saved it for PJ Fleck's birthday when he turned 44 on the very day they beat Wisconsin 24-7. And quite frankly, I don't even know if that score quite does the lopsided nature of the game justice. They dominated that thing from start to finish, were in control pretty much throughout, and really put an exclamation point on a season that had its ups and downs, but I think by the end you had to say it was better than most of us, at least I thought it was going to be, when they were 0-0.
Yeah, it was one where they left some meat on the bone there. They beat, say, a North Carolina. Say if they come back, complete the comeback against Michigan. If they don't have the inexplicable one against Rutgers there, where they lose. It's a much better season if they flip 1 or 2 of those. But they ended up 5-4 in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten's going to be a little different going forward with the 18-team league and the enhanced, I guess, competition with the 4 teams from out west. You might see teams being like, say, a loss more, a win less than they might have been the year before. Especially in the Gophers' case, being in the West like they were before.
Yeah, I mean, we can't forget too, when we add up everything that happened this year. I mean, they had close wins against USC, UCLA. I mean, they're making a lot of comebacks too, where it's like we can't just look at the ones that got away. We got to look at the sum total of things. It is tempting though, like you said. Like you say, let's just say pie in the sky, they would have beaten North Carolina, Rutgers, and Michigan. 10-2, and we might be talking about fringe playoff kind of talk at that point, or close to it at least.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Big Ten team, you're probably in the mix now. Then they'll look at the non-conference schedule a bit. Their plan going basically they're looking at they'll play a Power 4 team, they'll play an FCS team, and then they'll play a Group of 5 team. And depending on how many home Big Ten games they have, they'll have the Power 5 game on the road if they have 5 home Big Ten games, and then at home if they have 4 home Big Ten games. So it's a nice way to balance it out a little bit. Like next year they go to Cal, so that's another one on there that they're it's a similar type of program, maybe not to the Gopher level right now, but it's one that's crawling back.
But you remind me, they have Alabama on a future schedule, right?
Yeah, that's back. That's down. It's in the 32 and 33 back to back. So they another one they got coming up 26 and 27. They get a home and home with Mississippi State. So that'll be interesting. They get one of those years they get to go to Stark Vegas there and see how things are with cowbells down there.
Well, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, it's still 2024, and that win over Wisconsin must have been pretty satisfying for them. I mean, we've talked about the Badgers. They're not what they used to be. This has not been the year they hoped it would be, but to, put yourself in better bowl position, to dominate a game, and to knock the Badgers out of a, to keep them from going into a bowl for the first time since 2001. A lot of things to check off that you have to like from that game Friday.
Yeah, I think the Gophers were pretty happy with how that game played out. Wisconsin got it down to 21-7 and was driving again, and then they had some self-inflicted things that caused them not to score. And after that, it was pretty much over. It was interesting. PJ didn't. You can tell there's a little bit of rivalry there because usually there's a lot of right away in the press conference. There's a lot of credit thrown to the opponent, and basically he led with, "Hey, we pretty much dominated them. It could have been a lot worse." So I think there's between him and Fickle, there might not be. He probably didn't get a birthday card from Fickle on Saturday or on Friday.
Well, and I did notice. I mean, I think I've made a joke about this on social media. Their post-game handshake was about as brief as a lot of those Wisconsin drives. It was not. It was not a long handshake.
Yeah. There'll be some drive-bys sometimes there with these coaches. At least nobody planted a flag there and caused a melee. So
that's true. Not quite Brett Bielema and Tim Brewster circa 2010.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
Maybe still not the warmest of friends, but 7-5 now. That puts them in much better position. I mean, you don't have to talk about 6-6 where they could fall to. 7-5 gets them at least into probably a reasonable place that fans would want to travel to, I would think.
Yeah, I think the two bowls that I would look most at are the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte, North Carolina on January 3rd, and the Music City Bowl on December 30th in Nashville. I think if I get to talk to Gopher fans, and most would probably want to go to Nashville if possible. That's a vibrant nightlife in that town and everything. Nothing against Charlotte. I think that'd probably be a good destination too for them. A lot depends on what you have. A couple programs that like Michigan has a 7-5 record. Do they become, because of their fan base and everything, do they become more attractive to say one of the Florida bowls, specifically the Tampa Bowl there, or LikeWest, which normally you go by the numbers, and Iowa might be targeted for that one, but do they look at Michigan instead? Also Nebraska. Does one of these bowls look at Nebraska, like say the Duke's Mayo, because Nebraska hasn't been in a bowl since 2016, and their fans travel very well. The one thing in the Gophers' favor too lately is they've changed that reputation of not sending people to bowl games and other destinations. You look over the past few years, huge crowd they had at Colorado when they went there and won 30-0. Big crowd they took to North Carolina a couple years ago. Huge crowd at UCLA, the Rose Bowl. So they've shown that they can do some things with the fans. Absolutely.
Well, those will all come out, just in a few days, right? I mean, once the conference championship games get played, we'll know a lot of those things.
Yeah, Sunday afternoon.
Okay. Well, we'll look for that. Maybe final thing here, Randy. It wouldn't be the end of the season if it wasn't transfer portal talk already. And there's the window here. We've seen a few Gophers already announce their intentions. Nothing like major impact wise, but already here we go, right?
Yeah, it's this year's gonna be different too because of the upcoming legislation and the roster cap. You'll be seeing more and more say your walk-on types leave the program. They have to clear up some space. They got to clear up space too for the incoming recruiting class, which comes out Wednesday. We recorded a day earlier, so we'll know more about that class. But it looks like about 22 people they're bringing in. Then the portal officially opens Monday. But all across college football, there are players that are signaling their intentions to get ahead of things and to find themselves a place to land.
The Gophers have lost a few, but nobody of real on field so far this year.
Yeah, it's guys. Luther McCoy was a defensive lineman. Hayden Schwartz, another one. Another one is running back C.A. Bangura, who transferred in from Ohio U, who was a 1,000-yard rusher there one season, but didn't get to see much time here. So he's probably looking to find a place where he can get a little more playing time. It's just kind of it becomes the Wild West with guys looking for a place to land and get some playing time.
Well, I mean, I dare say they benefited just as much, if not more, from incoming than outgoing. I mean, at least
very
this year,
much.
Brosmer was huge for him, other guys too, but you could see the impact of quarterback on that Wisconsin game. And Wisconsin had the guy last year that kind of showed them the path, showed them the light, a few of those guys. And this year, they didn't have that guy because of injuries, and the Gophers did.
Yeah, it worked out very well. They've really done a good job of basically mining FCS programs. They've gotten guys like Jack Gibbons in the past, who's an NFL starter now. You have Max Brosmer here. You had Kyler Baugh, a pretty good defensive tackle. Jack Henderson was a FCS guy, and he was one of their better tacklers this year and for a couple of years. So they've done well in bargain shopping.
Yes, they have. Well, a great end of the year, some bowl game stuff coming up. We'll talk next week to kind of set that all up, since we'll know what the bowl is, but then we'll probably take a few weeks off at least. Appreciate all your time, Randy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, Mike.
Good stuff from Randy as usual. If it ends up being the Music City Bowl, I hope Gophers fans are prepared to dodge all the bachelorette parties in Nashville. That'd be a fun one, though, I'm sure, for everybody involved. Get out there, get a little sunshine. That would be a decent to pretty good bowl experience. Even the Duke's Mayo Bowl, like Randy was saying, in Charlotte, should be reasonably warm, would be a pretty good time. So the Gophers, by beating Wisconsin, at least cleared themselves of any of the less desired bowls and got themselves into good position for the postseason.
Watch your dreams and savings grow with Royal Credit Union's 4.25% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate saver. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 2/1/25. Insured by NCUA.
Football across Minnesota time. Last time of the year, Chip. Parting is such sweet sorrow. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How are you, Mikey?
I'm good. Last one of these. Feels like the football season flies by. It's already December. Good one, though, for the last one. Mankato, Minnesota State Mankato, man, they are knocking them down right now.
Yeah, it was a second straight upset walk-off winner in the playoffs. And I talked to Todd Hoffner and a couple players, Todd Hoffner, their coach, and a couple players. This really started after they lose their regular season finale against Minnesota Duluth by 14 points. They finished 8-3. There's a lot of speculation that they're not even going to get in. I talked to the kicker, Matthew Jager. He said he thought the season was done. There's no automatic qualifiers in Division II, so it's all by committee and rankings and kind of I don't know what the entire formula is, but there was some doubt about whether they were going to get in, and they did get in the following day, Sunday night. Saw they're going to have to play Augustana. And Todd Hoffner said, my team needs something. We got to have some kind of psychological thing to kind of reset this, get them back. Yep. It was a bad loss. Maybe the season didn't go the way they wanted. And so he calls a team meeting Monday mornings, next day, 7 a.m., and players line up, and he's at the door, and he says, "Hi, I'm Coach Todd Hoffner. Nice to meet you. Where are you from?" And each player had to introduce himself, say where they're from, give them something. And the assistant coaches were doing the same thing. It was a meet and greet like they had never met. And the symbolism was, hey, this is a brand new thing. New season, new start, whatever happened, this is a reset. And he said the mood kind of lifted. Guys were smiling about it. And I asked Matthew Jager, who's kicked 2 walk-off winners back-to-back, I said, yeah, did it kind of reset? He said, well, ironically and unfortunately, I missed the meeting. He said, he said, it's ironic because the only time I've ever been late to a meeting was my very first day at Mankato 2.5 years ago. And he missed this one, but then the players had a meeting later that week, just them, and they said, you know what, no matter what happened this season, we've really got to lean into this. We're a good team. We just have to really, believe that we can do this. And they go, and first week they beat Augustana on a walk-off winner, and then last week they're at Colorado State Pueblo, which is the number 1 seed in the region. Yeah. They're down 10 again, make another comeback, and they kick a winning field goal with 1 second left. And so they advance to the third round now, and they will play Bemidji State in a matchup of NSIC rivals. And Bemidji State's done the same thing. They have knocked off the 2 and 3 seeds in the region, so on the road. So nobody probably would have predicted this game coming up, that two NSIC teams will be playing in the third round, but Mankato is going to host on Saturday. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of creative thing that Todd did, Hoffner, to kind of, more than just give a speech about this being a new season, to actually kind of go through and have a meet and greet where guys were lined up coming into the building and they had to introduce themselves to the coaching staff.
Sure.
I thought that was kind of cool.
That is cool, yeah, and it is certainly cool that they're playing Bemidji. I mean, so third round, does that get you into the quarterfinals?
This is I'm pretty sure this is the quarterfinals.
Okay,
right. Yeah. So this would be, I think this is the quarterfinals. So
for a spot in the semis, well,
a spot in the semis in Division 2, and it speaks to how good and neither one of those teams were seeded in the playoffs. Yeah. Maybe that speaks to how difficult that conference is, and they kind of beat up on each other, and you have some losses. But both of them have and both of them were trailing. Bemidji this past weekend, they were down, I think 19-7 to Western Colorado, and in the second half, and they had 19-7 in the third quarter, and they had a big comeback, and so including a fumble return for a touchdown with a few minutes left. So both these teams have had to kind of dig deep to keep their season alive.
And no matter what, there'll be a Minnesota team, Cinderella team, kind of advancing into the much deeper than we thought. Well, that's super cool. Maybe some game balls and then kind of wrap up wrap up the season.
I got 4 game balls here. Quinn Carroll, Gophers offensive. He played offensive right tackle a lot during the year. They moved him to right guard. When Ariante Ursery went out in the first series at Wisconsin, they had PJ Fleck asked Quinn Carroll to move to left tackle. He had never played left tackle in his life. He told us that after a game. It's like, never left tackle like in college or never in your life. He said, never, even going back to Pop Warner, Edina, nothing, never had rep there. And so, but he slides over there and has just a really strong game as Gophers absolutely dominated the trenches in that big win for them.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold, I thought, was just fantastic at the end. Obviously, this game ball is not predicated on the first half of their offense, but after they got booed that 3 and out, Sam came back 12 of 17, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns, some really clutch throws into tight windows that helped them get that offense going and get the win and come back.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, Matthew Yeager, Minnesota State Mankato kicker, second straight week with a game winner at the buzzer, 4 field goals Saturday that he made, and he also, for the second consecutive week, they successfully converted an onside kick that they had to have. So that's 2 weeks in a row that they've done that. And he said he hadn't even attempted an onside kick, or he hadn't successfully completed one since he was at Armstrong High School.
Wow.
So a big deal there. And then lastly, Max Brosmer, tough conditions. I mean, it was frigid there in Madison. Wind was swirling, and you would have known it by the way he threw the ball. 17 of 26, 191 yards, 2 touchdowns. Basically, Gophers started running in fourth quarter when they had it. His numbers would have looked even better. And Pro Football Focus made him the highest graded quarterback in the Power 4 this weekend. So a really, really good game by him. And so there are our game balls.
Another successful season of football across Minnesota. I'm sure this will be back next year. Every story is just like your kids. You can't pick a favorite, but do you have anything that stands out from the year that you want to revisit really quick?
Yeah, I mean, I love doing football across Minnesota. I love the reaction we've gotten from years. This is year 4, and I have every intention to keep this going because I think it's such a cool thing to be able to do for our company to shine a spotlight on some, stories that we might not get to. I don't know if I have a favorite. I love the violin player, high school player that we did early in the season, Chip Lowmiller, getting to spend the day with him as a fire chief up in northern Minnesota. I don't know if there's a favorite, but I will say that I'm just so appreciative of the help that I get from, the schools, the teams that allow us to kind of create this brand with football across Minnesota. And it's something that I love getting to do every week. So it's always kind of bittersweet when it comes to the end because the football season's over. And I just love being able to tell stories from all levels of football in the state.
Awesome. Well, it's been fun talking to you about it all year. Let's plan to do this again next year. And I'm sure we'll talk to you soon about stuff other than football across Minnesota as you kind of, veer back into more of the other stuff as well. So Chip, great work as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Mikey.
Great stuff from Chip too. It feels like a changing of the guard here. We've had Randy and Chip on pretty much every Wednesday this fall. Chip to talk about football across Minnesota, Randy to talk about the Gophers. Probably get Randy on for one more week next week to talk about the bowl game and other stuff, any of the transfer portal stuff and early signing period stuff. But football season kind of drawing down, especially in the college ranks. Maybe opening up some spots on the show for Wild, Timberwolves, other things that maybe we haven't gotten to as much lately. So the seasons, we don't just feel them outside, we feel them here on Daily Delivery. Speaking of which, let's finish quickly with the cooler. Signing day, the names are starting to trickle in right now. Gophers expected to sign 21 players, I believe, in this class. We'll have a fuller report on that on Thursday. Sounds like PJ Fleck will be talking about all of those recruits today, so maybe I'll include a little bit of audio on tomorrow's show. Also on tomorrow's show, Lavelle E. Neal III expected to join me, Star Tribune columnist. We will do our Daily Delivery debate. 3 topics, 2 guys, only one outcome. Only one person leaves feeling good. I don't know. Usually we both leave feeling good. A little bit dramatic there, but it should be fun with Lavelle as it usually is. So that will be on Thursday. So until then, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. We'll be back at it again tomorrow.